CANZUK is a proposed diplomatic union between Canada, Australia, New Zealand and the United Kingdom that, while swirling around the political ecosystems of these countries for many years, has begun to gather a lot of momentum in recent weeks, particularly as a direct consequence of the brazen actions of the current US administration under President Donald Trump, who, in his drive to pull the United States out of any positions of global leadership and supposedly drive up the domestic American economy, i.e. isolationism, has adopted brash rhetoric towards even the US's closest allies, namely Canada and the European Union. But now even Australia and the United Kingdom have been subjected to sweeping tariffs despite both countries having trade surpluses with America, meaning in the simplest terms that they buy more goods from the US than the US buys from them. And so this all begs the question, with such an unpredictable and now seemingly unreliable occupant of the White House and the very fate of the established Western rules-based global order that has existed for the last 80 years since the end of World War II under such serious threat, is it time for these four nations bound so closely in culture, language and history to form a new bolstered union to protect and preserve their ideals? That is what we will discuss in this video, but first, what is CANZUK and what might it actually involve? Well, CANZUK International, the foremost group campaigning for a CANZUK Union, explains that the idea would aim to establish freedom of movement, free trade, a coordinated military and foreign policy, as well as deeper constitutional dialogue between Canada, Australia, New Zealand and the United Kingdom, who all of course share the same head of state as well in King Charles III. The CANZUK nations also all share the same majority language, English, the same Westminster-style parliamentary system, the same common law legal system, and the same view on maintaining ideals of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law as part of their westernized societal structures. All in all, they are probably some of the closest countries culturally, despite such large distances between their relative landmasses. And as CANZUK International's campaign states, they are virtually the same people with only the cover of our passports dividing us. And indeed, a common citizenship is something also proposed under a potential union. They argue that if the European Union, made up of 27 different countries with a vast range of cultures, languages and legal systems, can successfully implement things like free movement and free trade, then there is no reason why CANZUK nations can't also embrace these policies for its citizens, especially in a globalized world where distance is far less of a barrier than at any other time in history. Now, around the time of the UK's exit from the EU in early 2020, the idea of CANZUK had gained some momentum as Britain aimed to expand its global relationships, which it argued had been curtailed by its membership of the EU, rightly or wrongly. However, over the past 5 years, this momentum had seemingly slowed, especially after the economic shocks of the COVID pandemic and the war in Ukraine. But as countries continue to emerge and adapt to those setbacks, and now as the United States increasingly adopts a hostile approach to its trading relationships, even to its very closest of allies, this shift has led to a reinvigoration of the CANZUK movement, and particularly in Canada, which might prove to be the country that could grasp this potential new alliance and drive it forward. The introduction of wide-ranging tariffs will indeed have a profound effect on the Canadian economy, as it will the American economy. The US accounts for about 75% of Canada's exports, and unlike what you might hear, this is not the US subsidizing Canada. That is wrong rhetoric. Americans essentially just love buying Canadian goods. Sectors like Canadian agriculture, automotive industries, and manufacturing industries stand to suffer the most as they are deeply integrated into US supply chains, with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce estimating the tariffs could shrink Canada's GDP by 2.6%. All this is to say, as James Skinner, the founder and chief executive of CANZUK International, writes, Canada will now see the diversification of its trade partnerships as a necessity to ensure economic stability, previously an unthinkable betrayal from one of its closest allies. And unsurprisingly, a deepened relationship with CANZUK countries is a popular way of Canada doing so, and having such close ties with these countries could inevitably facilitate smoother trade and investment flows, especially as the four nations could leverage this synergy to create a more integrated economic space, reducing their dependency on any single market. The UK, for example, which currently has tried to position itself as a middle way, trying to balance relations with the US and the EU, is in nonetheless a precarious position, and having a third option of a strong CANZUK free market would no doubt be beneficial. with some caveats to protect certain UK sectors, I'm sure. But these are conversations that I can see being fairly swiftly resolved given the common language and respect between these countries. But CANZUK is not just about free trade, it also has a strong strategic, military and intelligence aspect. The current global situation, with an American administration that seemingly wants to retreat from its positions of global leadership for no apparent reason, ceding its position as global hegemon even quicker and allowing China to appear as a more reasonable actor, something which seems unthinkable to European allies, especially the threats against the NATO alliance, and dismissing the idea of Article 5, which has only ever been triggered once after 9/11 and saw dozens of countries coming to America's aid to fight the war on terror. And I don't see those countries asking for compensation, but especially after some of the comments with JD Vance, the Vice President, that is deeply insulted two of America's closest military allies in France and the UK, who have fought and died side by side with Americans for the last 3 decades in their wars. The global system seems to be increasingly moving towards one of multipolarity, with many regional powers instead of one big global power and their respective spheres of influence, which, as anyone who has studied the history of international relations will know, is one of the most unstable global systems there could be, especially with countries seeking refuge now in nationalism, protectionism and authoritarianism. In one word, volatile. So you can see why CANZUK has been becoming increasingly popular once more, many calling for the stability and safety of allies with such close cultural and political ties bound by a common head of state and heritage. While the US tariffs are a significant blow, they also serve as a reminder of the importance of robust, diversified international relations, and I think we are at a crucial turning point in history, both for the 4 CANZUK nations, but also for the Western global order, which is indeed under so much threat, essentially from within. After all, whatever you think of Henry Kissinger, he was right in the fact that it is dangerous to be America's enemy, but to be America's friend is fatal. If unpredictability, instability and betrayal is to be the norm in the US's relations with its partners, the time for CANZUK is now. Canada, Australia, New Zealand and the UK need to seize the opportunity to bolster their economic, strategic, intelligence, military and diplomatic ties to create a union for their mutual interest, a reforged Anglosphere to ensure a prosperous future without the need for overdependence on any one country or market. And CANZUK polls incredibly well in all 4 countries, and if more people knew about this opportunity, I do believe they would support it. It is undeniable that due to its territorial size, geographic scope, population and advanced economies and militaries, CANZUK could easily establish itself as a new great global power, and by banding together, this Anglosphere would be a force to be reckoned with. So what do you think? Is it now the perfect time for a CANZUK Union to emerge amidst the current instability in the world? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and share it around to spread the idea of a CANZUK Union. This needs more publicity. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.